Hi everyone, welcome to GoLocal Live. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us this Thursday afternoon. If you just were watching, we had Jay Gendron, COO of Lottery at IGT, in to talk with us a little bit about operations and more. And of course, a familiar face, Rhode Island Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Kate.
I appreciate your taking the time to come in. It's the middle of summer. Of course, the last General Assembly session seems not that far off, but of course, anyone looking at the local and national stage knows that the next election seems just around the corner. So I want to take this opportunity. We've had a number of elected officials in here sort of in the summer, not to say lull, if you will, but just to give us a lay of the land, sort of how you saw 2019, let's get the report card from the Assembly and from your priority list, and looking at what you see as necessary moving forward before 2020.
Yeah, no, so we were able to pass a couple of bills. That's always good, but some of my like really high priorities, which were like, for example, early voting, didn't make it through one more time, and I'm committed to continuing to have that discussion at the General Assembly next time around. But what did get passed was moving the primary day, which I was very concerned because we knew for a fact we were not going to be able to get ballots to and back from military and overseas voters in time come the 2020 election. The last thing I want, particularly as the sister of a service member, is to not be able to service our ballots over to our military men and women. So I had a proposal for the General Assembly to move it into August. The General Assembly, in its infinite wisdom, decided to do it 8 Tuesdays before the general election, which next year will put us the Tuesday after Labor Day weekend. I really tried very hard to make sure that they understood that this was not a good idea. It only happens a few times over the next 10 years.
Okay.
So it's not going to happen every single year, but next year it does. And I proposed an amendment that would take care of it, which is to move it into the Wednesday. That didn't work out. And so, yes, we are having a primary Tuesday after Labor Day next year.
And so let's talk a little bit about why you think early voting has hit such roadblocks up at the Assembly.
You know, it really comes down to, I think, change. Change is hard for a few of our incumbent legislators. They're concerned about all sorts of things. We've tried to walk them off that cliff. It hasn't worked. But, you know, politics is the art of continuing to have conversations and hopefully at some point meet, not necessarily compromise that much because there's not much more left to compromise on this bill. But I also think that getting more Rhode Islanders to come and speak to their members is always a good thing. And so maybe we can have a little bit more of the voices, people who really understand that early in-person voting is something that Rhode Islanders are clearly expressing that they want in the use of emergency mail ballots, and that it is a much more secure way of doing early voting than what the process that we have right now. My biggest fear is that in 2020, given the interest in the presidential election, we'll get a really big push at the cities and towns, and it's a very labor-intensive, paper-driven process right now. Instead of just having you show your ID, getting you checked off on the poll book, getting your ballot, voting, and putting yourself into the machine. I fear that there might be a breakdown somewhere. Of course, the Board of Elections, myself, the boards of canvassers will work hard against that, but early voting would have solved that issue.
So, let's talk a little bit about concerns, as you said, with volume and what the machines can currently handle now. Where is Rhode Island? I mean, there had been some new voting machines introduced. I mean, how much is new infrastructure? How much is old infrastructure? What's sort of the landscape look like? As you said, possibly taking on a pretty heavy load. But what does that look like for here in Rhode Island?
So in Rhode Island, we have been ahead of the curve all the way back to the days of then Secretary Langevin. In my first year of office, I realized that our voting machines were outdated. And so I came in and had strong conversations with the General Assembly and with the governor and said, we just can't afford to have these break down. As luck would have it, we did invest and we bought, machines that are based on a paper ballot, which are the gold standard across the country. I think even the Senate Intelligence Committee report just recently released says that should be the case. And so we have paper ballots, we have state-of-the-art voting systems, and I think that we're well positioned to handle the demand next election cycle. One of the additional things that I was able to get for the Board of Elections was we were able to obtain having an engineering professor from the University of Rhode Island, Professor Gretchen Mott, come in and do some consulting paid for by the Democracy Fund as well as some of our dollars for elections that helped the Board of Elections better understand how these new machines worked, how the queuing works within a polling location. And so I am very hopeful that 2020, despite its demand, will be seamless.
Do you think we'll see record numbers in 2020?
I believe so, absolutely, absolutely.
So what else does the state need to do looking forward? Again, here we are, summer of 2019. A few more questions, but let's look at 2020. Sure. What's the office looking to do? As you said, you'd wanted early voting, didn't get it, but to ensure the accuracy and efficacy of at the polling locations.
Yeah, well, so I'm going to continue to let Rhode Islanders know that there's 3 ways to vote. There's a mail ballot. You can actually vote from your home. And we've added postage on those envelopes, so you can then just put it in the mailbox. We still have emergency mail ballots and election day. So if you don't want to deal with election day, there are other options for you. The other thing is that we've really worked hard on is to make sure that our voting lists are as clean and as accurate as possible. And so
you beat me to my next question.
Yes, we've been working on that over many, many years. It's not something that you can do overnight because of federal laws that prohibit, for good reason, people coming in and willy-nilly sort of just jumping around and taking people out or dumping people. But so what I would ask anybody watching this is to go onto vote.ri.gov and verify your voter information. Verify that you're at the right address, that your party affiliation is correct. If there's something that's not correct or it needs to be updated, you can update it online. We have automated voter registration, which when you do a DMV transaction now, if you change your address at the DMV, it will be automated. The process will be, we will get it at our central voter registration system. And we are also in the process of making sure that our hardware and internet structures are secure. So we are currently, Stonewall Solutions, I'm proud to say, a Rhode Island company from Pawtucket, just won the RFP for rebuilding our central voter registration system so that we are secure to modern day standards. It was a great program back in 2003 when we built it, but now it needs to be upgraded.
Is this the first major upgrade for the
So we've been doing
system?
patches and certain upgrades over time, but there comes a point where you just can't patch it up anymore. You just really have to rebuild, given what we know about technology today. And that's something that I think government needs to do more of, is to rebuild certain structures so that they are secure in this world of cybersecurity.
And speaking of secure and working up to, the standards that the state needs, talk a little bit about time frame, because I'm sure people think, new system, UHIP, DMV.
Yeah, no.
When is this expected to be finished by? How is it going to be tested by the office? How is it going to, have those assurances that come 2020, everything's good to go?
Sure. No, and believe me, well, the only thing I can say is that I was a deputy secretary of state back when we built the first system. So I've been on this rodeo before. It is a little bit of a white knuckle kind of process, but there's no good time to rebuild your central voter registration system because you have elections every 2 years. Yeah. So we are fully operating with the goal of having it fully implemented by 2020. Through all that process, we have incredible involvement from the local boards of canvassers, from the Board of Elections, from all the election officials that work in that system. Plus, we have a good starting point to start with, which is the current system gave us the lay of the land, and then there's wishes and dreams that people have about what else could it do. So we're starting with a strong base. We are incorporating a lot of user feedback. That is the success, right? To a good IT implementation, is to have people who know the system be involved in it, and then bring your outside users that are not so familiar to test and kick things around before you go online.
And let's talk a little bit about the voter rolls and how you said it is difficult to really get into the weeds, make sure that, as you said, you're not willy-nilly removing folks, if you will. But, how does that process work? Of course you hear from folks that say, it's filled with dead people. So, how often is it culled? And do you have a number of Rhode Islanders that have been removed?
Absolutely, and I should have remembered that from the top of my head. Of course, I don't have it at the top of my head. But it's
check
been.
Back later.
I know. Check back later. But it's literally like over 70,000 Rhode Islanders that have been removed. We actually have whole set of standard processes. What's important is to do things in a standardized way so that nobody feels that they're somehow being targeted. That's what the federal government looks for when they look at, are you purging certain voters? So in my first year in office, we joined the ERIC, the Electronic Registration Information Center, which is a partnership of states. And now more than half of the states in the country including Florida and Massachusetts, which just joined, have agreed to very securely exchange information. What that tells us is when somebody moves to, say, DC, we have a process where, during the year, we will get a notice saying like, hey, you've got a voter that seems to be a duplicate with DC, or even within the state or within the same city. They may have moved, you need to check this. And we'll go through this whole process of vetting. If the person doesn't respond at all, we are able then to put them on an inactive list. Now, inactive just means that if they don't vote in 2 cycles, 2-year cycles, then we can remove them. You can't just say they're inactive and you take them out. That's where a lot of other states get into trouble. We have a very meticulous process to make sure that that's accurate. We have, with regards to dead people, since 2006, we've had a direct connection with vital statistics, so that when people die in Rhode Island, that we're able to take them off. And so all of these things help clean and maintain the best voter list, I think, that the state has seen so far.
Why do you think only half the states are part of this nationwide database?
So some of them may not be well positioned. It's hard for me to say, given that I'm not in their shoes. But I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to be a part of this, because it really helps you with a consistent cleanup of your voter lists.
Well, it sounds like the addition of Massachusetts and Florida, in particular here in Rhode Island, seems like it would be a huge help with natural places that Rhode Islanders, if they're not here, end up going. And let's talk a little bit about that inactive status. There might be some times where there is, funny business afoot. But I mean, in the event that someone might be older, didn't realize, maybe they're double, they registered at Florida and forgot to, not. So it would be very common here in Rhode Island, moving down to Florida.
Yes, but the only way you get put inactive is if we're able to get a piece of mail that says this person is no longer here. Then they will be put on inactive, and then for 2 cycles, if they then if somehow the person moves back to Rhode Island, back to that same house, and they go and vote in year 2, all they have to do is they have to go through a little bit more paperwork to prove that who they are, and then they're integrated into the active voter files. So it's all fairly well documented, and I want to encourage everybody to go to vote.ri.gov. 1, to check your voter registration, and 2, to read up on all these processes. We have a lot of information on elections in Rhode Island. It's a lot of information. Nobody's expected to know it all. We have a lot of other things in our lives. That's why we've made it very easy for you to go online to vote.ri.gov to get the information you need to be a voter, to be an engaged and informed voter.
And let's talk a little bit about something that was revealed recently, Board of Elections, some financial crime, if you will, pertaining to filings by elected officials. This happened to Cranston Mayor Alan Fung. Let's talk a little bit about the situation, and as you said, how it can be, how you can ensure it's secure.
Yeah, no. So basically, the problem was, and the Board of Elections, basically reached out to me and to Mayor Fung to admit to their misstep, which is that they were trying to be very transparent about the fact that we had paid a part of at the end of. When you participate in public financing, you have to return half of whatever's left in your campaign fund account, because you're not participating in public finance just to hoard the money. So you give half of what's left at the end of the year back to the state. And so we all write checks out of our accounts to do that. Those checks were scanned and posted to show people that they were actually real and there was a real reimbursement to the state done. However, they did not redact the routing number and the account number, and so some unscrupulous people used to create fake checks and I guess go through this. When this first happened to me, I just thought it was just regular bank fraud, and in fact, that's what the Citizens Bank officer told my treasurer is this happens, but we'll make you whole, and I didn't think anything of it. It was later when I saw the report that it was a similar incident to Mayor Fung that then I said, okay, now we need to report it to the state police because it's more than just an isolated incident and they need to look into this. Maybe there's other elected officials. We should all look to our campaign accounts. So
whose responsibility is it for the redaction? Is it for the candidate or for the Board of Elections?
No, it's the Board of Elections because they have to redact it off of the copy. Yep. When they go there. And like I said, things happen, live and learn, we moved on, and they were very, very apologetic. And these things happen.
So before you came out here, there seemed to be some discussion as it pertained to AI in the realm of elections. Is that even a potential?
No. Well, actually, it was on the AI, artificial intelligence, just overall, and the challenges that our society is going to be facing as more functions that are currently done by people are now done, by computers. So an analogy in our lifetimes would be, we used to have secretaries that you would dictate a letter to, and they would type them up. And then now we have Microsoft Word, so nobody does that anymore, right? So similarly, we're going to be going into a new jump over the next 7 to 10 years. And
Do you think that we'll not have the same number of people that will be required to oversee the running of democracy?
I know. No, I think democracy is a human sport, for sure. You need to have real people, and it's the same when people ask me about, well, when can we vote through the internet? I don't know that we'll see it in our lifetime, because you need to be able to trust elections, and so a paper ballot, whenever there's a question, you can go back to it and say, okay, I get it. I see where the voter's intent was. That's not going to happen online. So I think, we're still a ways away, but these are important conversations to keep track of. The other thing is that I think that where we've been really successful, I think, at the Department of State, is that we've really invested in professional development for our state workers so that they are aware of what's happening with regards to technology. We are very concerned about cybersecurity in elections. So we actually do testing on an ongoing basis with, phishing emails. Phishing emails is the #1 way in which some of these municipalities that we hear about have been attacked. And so, you just have to be constantly, cybersecurity, there's no destination. It's just an ongoing path that you have to be vigilant on at all times. That is a change in the way government was run from even the first year that I was in office. So, but it can happen, it can be done. I think the Department of State shows people that you can have government rise to that task in this modern day.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time to come down to the studio with us here. Again, give us that recap of the last session. And of course, looking forward to 2020 and what the office is doing to be modernized and ready to go for the next set of elections. And I'm sure we'll see you between here and there.
Absolutely. And remember, go to vote.ri.gov. Thanks.
Okay, Secretary Gorbea, thank you very much. And thanks for watching. That wraps us up here on GoLocal Live in downtown Providence. Of course, catch us on golocalprov.com. Find us on Facebook, and we'll see you tomorrow. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.